Hey, this is Russell, and I work at the video store, the place that we can all go to once a week whenever it is movie night. Interesting people pop in to rent something, and we go through the films that they've loved across their life. And then when the store is quiet, I chat to my buddies about the films that we're watching on streaming platforms and out in cinemas. We're here to help you figure out what you can watch. All right, let's start the show. Let's open up the shop.
Did you see that thing yesterday on the TV? It was ready, interesting!
Good morning, guys.
Morning, Russell.
I love that energy. How's it, Graham? How are you, man?
Good and you, dude.
Yeah, cool, man. And you, Cole?
Hi.
Oh, no, man. Eeyore. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to it. This is the 100th episode.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey,
We're 100 years old.
can you believe it? No, it's lovely. It's all very exciting. We have taken great joy in bringing you an episode at least once a week.
Yeah.
100 times now.
100 times.
Wild.
And
That is cool.
And we've loved it. So first and foremost, thank you to everyone. We've seen the numbers grow. We've seen the fact that, you know, there's this base of people that listen at the start on the first day, and we treasure you. We
Yep.
really and
Now, who are you people?
So-
I really want to know.
so
Like,
yes, so this is actually an important thing. Is
Yeah?
that first I want to mention who our guest is, but then I want to talk just very specifically about something which is a very exciting evolution, which I think
Ooh,
the video store is going to go into
change is coming.
a little bit of a change of format, which I think is going to be great. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. But firstly, in these 100 episodes, over the course of this time, to say there's been highs and lows is wrong. It's mostly been highs.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was
It's
one.
weird.
There was one low in particular,
I know what you're going to say.
and none of you guys know about it because it was very much behind the scenes and
Behind the counter.
behind the counter. And it was the fact that I recorded an episode with a gentleman called Denim Richards, who stars in Yellowstone.
Yes.
He came out as part of the Joburg Film Festival. I met him. This was not this year's Joburg Film Festival, last year's.
2023, guys.
2023. If you want a timestamp, I remember it was the same weekend that Imagine Dragons played in South Africa.
All right.
If that means anything to you, because I remember it happening around that day. And we recorded this incredible episode, and only for me to discover that I thought I had not recorded it. I was looking, it's a whole long complicated thing which I don't have to get into, but basically I was not managing the SD card of the
Right.
Zoom recorder right. And I left that going, oh my God, it didn't record. And so I tried to get him back, but he was flying out. And what I did is I had all these other old episodes that were still on the card, and that's what made this thing faulty and lag and give us problems when I was recording with him in the moment. And I then deleted those episodes
Yes.
to try and make space for what I thought could be a re-record on the day. I thought, how can I get this guy back? Because, oh my God, my heart sank. You know, you just feel it in your throat.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't believe I've just lost this episode with this guy. You know, it was our first international, you know,
Yes.
And Yellowstone hadn't come to South Africa yet, but I knew how huge it was. It was,
Yes.
it was the biggest show in America, like literally at that time of recording.
Oh, goodness.
And recorded something again just to test this recorder, realized, oh my God, I actually think I did record it, and it was under another folder. It was under another date. Shit. So then I tried to recover it. But
Yes.
because I had deleted the files, and because I had recorded over,
Yeah.
it would then jumbled what I
Yes,
had. So I
yes.
actually had it the whole fucking time. And anyways,
This happens to all of us, dude.
Yeah.
over the course of the next year, I would try and think and constantly think about this episode that got away. We'll get into it, but long story short, we got a chance to re-record.
Amazing.
Denim is spending more and more time in Southern Africa. His base is Botswana, and I managed to then see him a few more times, and we set it up. And then when I thought, you know what's going to be the 100th episode? And I thought, this is the one. This is the one episode that plagued me for so long that really was something I wanted to get. And we just had such a nice chat.
Nice.
Sorry to speak about it before it happens.
Happy.
But yeah, so Denim is going to pop in a moment. This is
Rad.
A very interesting dude. He is an actor. So as I said, he's a part of the show Yellowstone, which has since come to South Africa.
Okay.
And we've loved it over the last year. The stars Kevin Costner. It's on Showmax. It's an incredible show. But he does so much more than that. He is really getting more and more involved in the productions of South Africa and Southern Africa. He's doing really interesting stuff. He's a smart dude. So I think it's going to be a lovely chat.
Cool.
And I'm really looking forward to having you guys be here for it. I think we can learn a lot from him.
Right.
But then for all of those who are coming for the first time, welcome to the video store. As you can see, it's a monumental episode to have joined us on.
Yeah, well done.
Our 100th one. So you've got another 99 that you can catch up on over on the thevideostore.co.za. After Denim's chat, myself, Cole and Graeme are going to talk about movies and shows that we're watching. This is our chance to talk more about that. I want to talk about The Boy and The Heron.
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
Which we had a chance to watch last week. It's going to be in cinemas this Friday, in the week that this episode is released. I want to talk about Civil War, which is the new Alex Garland film, which is in cinemas at the moment, including the Bioscope.
Mm-hmm.
And is there anything else?
Fallout.
Fallout, the TV show.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. But yeah, we're on the cusp of a change, as I said, and I want to just quickly talk about that. We've long since spoken about a little bit of a change. The last 100 episodes, as they've evolved, basically we've been putting out what could be an hour and a half, sometimes even more like 2-hour episode, where it's basically these two chats together. There's the guest chat, which is when a guest pops into the video store to rent something, and then there's our chat as the clerks, the people who work behind the counter. And what we've made the call to do is to split those two up.
Yeah.
And we've been speaking about it and planning it for a long time behind the counter. And I wasn't sure when to pull the trigger. And then the realization was after 100. So do 100 as the format we've done. And now we want to try it in a different way. So we're going to have our Clerks chat come out on a Tuesday. The point of that being more immediate, more now, more interactive. So that's when Cole says we want to get to know you. Who are you?
Yeah.
I've got lots of different ways in which the Clerks chat can sit on its own as a way to have more of a dialogue between you guys about what we're watching, what we're enjoying, what we think about what we've been watching, what we want to see more of. I've got many ideas as to how the Clerks chat can grow. And then the plan is on a Thursday to have the guest chat come out, which is just that extra bonus chat about film and the love of film and these interesting people that are doing interesting things, that are often making the stuff that we consume.
Cool.
And that'll just be such an added addition. So the thought is after this episode that you will now get 2 episodes a week on a Tuesday and a Thursday.
Hell yeah. Are we going to go back to using Vincent van Gaad's art?
Yes, good old Gaddy can draw more doodles, which will be the poster art. And in a way, it really was the original intention.
Yes.
I wanted the video store to obviously include these other guests and these celebrities, but not in a way rest solely on them. I wanted there to be a very strong core, which is the folks behind the counter. And for us to be really talking about, what's coming out this week, what came out last week, what's coming out next week.
Yes.
And to help you figure out what to watch.
Yeah.
All right. So I think without further ado,
let's chat to this guy.
Let's get into it. Okay. Have you guys got something to keep you busy while Denim visits?
I'll find something.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Give me something to do.
I think I peaked last week with that naked lunch joke.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah, it was so great, dude.
All right. Well, you guys go hang out
Yeah, we'll go hang out at the storeroom. I've got my MacBook. We're going to go watch something on my MacBook with the lights off in the storeroom. That's what we'll do.
Oh, that sounds great. Okay. This is Denim Richards finally popping in to rent something. Welcome back.
I'm back. Yeah, it's been, what was it, a year?
It's been over a year.
Yeah.
And you're someone who I've thought about a lot. You were such an exciting person to get on the show, and we had such a great chat.
Yes, we did.
I'm not going to get into all of what happened. I'll explain that in the other parts of the episode, but thank you for making the time.
No, thanks for having me.
And being back here at the video store. I think perhaps the best way to launch into it is how is it that we're so lucky to have a relationship? Like, what's in essence brought you to Joburg as in Southern Africa, I guess, as a whole?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. The great thing is that you're persistent, right? Because it's like, it's not like you're messaging every day, but like, monthly or quarterly, it's like, hey, next time you're there. So it's just staying in the zeitgeist, staying in the pocket, which I appreciate because I'm very much like that. Like
there was certainly a point where I was like, I think I need to let it go. Like,
it's not going to happen ever
again.
Well,
there was just a part of me that was like, I just don't want to be that guy to you that...
Right. It's always feeling like...
I had this chance and I lost it. And if I've lost it, then I must just learn the lesson.
Right. Like there's lessons within there. Well, no, it's so funny because it was like, I think when we recorded originally, right, the next day I was leaving. Right, and
it was the thing. A matter of hours from our chat that you were leaving.
Yeah, and so I was like, and I remember like I could come to the hotel, and I'm like, bro, I'm already on my way to the airport.
It's way too late.
Then
there was this lovely moment where I saw you in the crowd at Comic-Con, and I was like,
yes.
I was like,
when was that? Was that August?
That was in August of last year, gosh, and then I was like you know what?
Much. Yeah, this is the time.
I think we should try and do this again.
I forgot Comic-Con was here, and then there's another Comic-Con that's coming up. I think, April, whenever this airs, but this April 28th, I think in Cape Town.
Yeah, so so the one that in Joburg is called Comic-Con Africa.
Comic-Con Africa, okay.
Which I think is a really good example of what Joburg is. Like, Joburg can sort of represent a whole continent.
Right.
We're big, and it's the biggest, of all the Comic-Cons.
Had a great turnout, yeah.
No, and it's huge, and it's, of course, on such a crazy scale. To the point where, like... Massive. Maybe it's too big.
It's a lot.
But a lot. Cape Town is one of those cities that, when it does something, it's of a great quality. And so perhaps they just felt they needed another Comic-Con Africa. So another Comic-Con. So they did Cape Town.
No, but this is, I've for me being in South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa specifically, I spent time in Botswana and, these types of things. But I spent a lot of time in South Africa. But it's also, I've met so many great people, have great relationships, like with one of your former guests, Makla Dube, who's the director for Heart of the Hunter, and we have a great relationship. We have a company together, the Opulent Entertainment Group, where the
Opulent.
Yeah, Opulent Entertainment Group. Yeah. So, but it was, for us, it was important to be very intentional about the things that we do. I think one of the things that oftentimes happen in the entertainment world is that everybody is kind of like ships in the night. We come together for a project or for a meeting or this, and then maybe you see somebody at a meeting or a film festival, and then you're kind of like just two ships, in the ocean that are kind of passing. But then you oftentimes wonder, like, what would have happened if we were just a little bit more intentional about the relationship and what that could have been, and the industry is it's so big, but it's so small at the same time, right? Like there's so many people that are wanting to be a part of it, but there's very few people that are actually a part of it, if that makes sense. Like there's just a lot of people that are like, we want to do this. If you're doing music, if you're writing this, that's all part of the ecosystem of the entertainment industry. But the people that are like kind of moving the needle are very select, right? It's a very select group of people. And I think that if we can be a little bit more intentional about what those relationships are and how we can kind of expand into a greater opportunity, I think is something that is really important for me. And so spending time here in South Africa, I've been able to meet so many phenomenal, artists and directors and producers and writers, and just wanting to be more intentional about what those relationships are.
That's amazing, and that's kind of what I've used a lot of what I've done. A very similar intention, where just something as simple as this podcast
Right.
is a great moment to reconnect with people, to have a proper relationship.
Yeah.
A 40-minute uninterrupted conversation is actually,
Right.
you realize, a very difficult thing to actually
have.
do.
Yeah, because
And-
everyone's distracted.
And when life gets on, time goes quicker. I was saying to someone the other day, I can't remember the last time I had a sort of lazy, long day.
Hey, yeah, just to
where
lounge
where
around.
the time just went on. But what was that initial seed? Because we spoke about it last year. What was that
Yeah.
initial calling that took you to Southern
Just
Africa?
come down here, yeah.
Because you grew up in California.
Yes, yeah.
Been very busy around the world. What was that calling specifically?
No, it's a great question. For me, I've always have had a connection to the continent, but growing up in the U.S., in Los Angeles, you don't really think about Africa in any type of regard because you're just so busy just trying to be, I wouldn't even say successful, just trying to be a working artist.
Yeah.
That you just can't even think about going to another place and trying to start all over when you're not even successful in the area that you grew up in.
Yeah.
Right. But it was about 4 years ago now, 4.5 years ago, I was sitting in my office in the U.S. and it was just kind of like a spiritual thing that was like, it's time to go to Africa.
And at that point, had you been?
No. I hadn't. I know a lot about it. I've studied Africa. I know so much about this continent that it kind of makes my head spin some days because I'm sitting there going, when did I have the time to know about all this stuff?
Yeah.
But somehow, I think just over the course of my life, because I'm very much a historian, and so I want to learn and
There's a
know a lot of things.
fascination
Yeah, I
there,
love it. And so I was like, great. And so I bought a one-way ticket. The first place that I went to was Botswana. And
how did you discover Botswana?
again, it kind of
spoke to you in a way.
Yeah, it was like I was looking at the map sub-Saharan Africa. The first thing I was thinking about was like, well, what was the intention, right? Again, like I say this all the time at nauseum, like, are you doing things for intention or for attention? And so I try to live very intentionally and not just like go to a place. Like I didn't come to Africa to go on safaris, right?
Okay.
Like, oh, I want to see the big five. And then, I went to like Kruger National Park and then run back to the U.S. and be like, I was in Africa. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, like logistically you were in Africa, but like
it sounds like the history and the people
Yeah,
and the
it was-
culture was more
it
important.
was a
to
little
you.
bit more than seeing a giraffe and some lions, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I think for me it was about, like, is there a place that I could go to where I feel like I can make impact? And when I say impact, I don't mean it as charity or aid or a savior complex, but a place where I was like, if I'm going to be in a place, like I want to feel like I'm contributing to the outcome of an area in everything that I do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't see the point of going anywhere. Like, if you're not going anywhere to make impact, what are we doing? So I looked at, I had an opportunity where I could have come to South Africa first, but I was like, I felt like South Africa already was kind of like what it was going to be. Like, I felt like there was no real impact I felt like I could make, even though that's definitely changed now, I believe.
Sure.
But in the beginning, I was like, okay, so I looked at other places and I was like, what's Botswana? I was like, I never even heard of Botswana. Like, I never even heard the name Botswana ever in my life.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, well, that sounds interesting. And it's like, it's a country at that time, it was like 2.4 million people in it. It's like, it's very small. It's kind of, and I was like, well, maybe this is a really nice entry point into the continent to go to a place where it's a little bit smaller. There's not a lot going on as far as people wise. Growing up in Los Angeles, it was like going to a Lagos, Nigeria, or coming to a Joburg where there's already a lot of people, or Kenya. I'm
Yeah.
like, I already know what it's like to be around a lot of people in the bustling 24-hour economy. I'm coming from LA.
But what's interesting is that you're not just coming from LA.
Hmm.
4 years ago, we're talking like kind of COVID-y times, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
but you're
Yeah.
already on Yellowstone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, like,
yeah.
This is the most fascinating part
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Is that at what you could argue, I mean, maybe it's
Right.
different, but at least from my perspective, at the height
Yeah.
of your career.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the middle of what is quickly at that point becoming one of the most successful shows in the world
Yeah.
at that moment,
Yeah.
you decided to go
Yeah.
to Botswana.
Yeah. It's definitely
Like I've lived next door to Botswana, and I am guilty of admitting that I haven't gone yet.
you've never been. Yeah. And it's a
but
35-minute flight.
It's wild. And I remember
Right.
you explaining that to me, because after our chat, I actually, funny enough, secretly was considering trying to get to you, trying to get
just
to
trying to see if I
Botswana.
could just get there and we could do it there.
And after our chat, I realized just how busy the schedule was
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But I was going to propose, like, you know what? I've never gone.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a great lesson.
Just to go.
And experience it.
see
And
it.
it's this kind of pilgrimage to kind of
just
do the re-recording.
Yeah, do the whole thing.
But I remember as a little kid in school, you know, you learn about your neighboring countries and finding out that we weren't the greatest country
Right.
in our area, because
Right.
you tend to think you are.
Of course.
Like I think a lot of Americans think, oh, we're the freest.
Yeah,
and you're like,
American exceptionalism.
no, you're not.
Yeah.
So for South Africa, I thought, no, we're the biggest and greatest in this kind of tip of
Right.
Africa. And then you realize, like, a country like Botswana is actually more stable.
Yeah.
It's safer.
Currency
The
stable.
currency is better, and
very
you're like,
stable.
hold on, what?
Yeah, what's happening over there in this small place where seemingly nobody wants to be?
Could it maybe be Wakanda?
Yeah, could it, like, is
Could
it
it maybe-
possible? The potential.
There's this little shield in
Oh,
Gaborone
well,
that actually
yeah.
takes you into this African
Well,
kingdom.
it's funny because it's so, it's very niche, right? Like,
Yeah.
when you go there, it is a very niche place. But to your earlier point, my team thought the exact same thing. They're so excited. Yellowstone, I think during that time we just ended season 3, now going into season 4. And, it's just blowing up ratings. And, it's all these things. It's the number 1 show in the U.S. by a wide margin. And there's all these other opportunities. And then, everyone's excited. And then Denim calls and said he bought a one-way ticket to Botswana. And like, okay, great. Enjoy vacation. Like, when are you coming back? And I'm like, well, it's not really a vacation. I bought a one-way ticket. And like, okay, great. But when will you be coming back?
Because
right?
I'd
Like,
imagine that
I'd imagine
that pressure's a crazy thing.
100%, because they're looking at it from like, oh, we have these opportunities, and
there's a window, right?
Yeah. It's a very small window, but you have to be. For me, everything's about you have to be great. Like, I'm very big about like being special, being great, and you have to go and create great sometimes, and you have to believe in your special. And I didn't believe in this. I have this small window of time where I'll be able to be successful, and if I'm not in the U.S., then everything's gonna fall apart. I just refused, either through my own ignorance or through my own stubbornness. I just refused to believe that was going to be my story.
I wish I had that at a couple of points in my life where I felt I was being pulled by people who had good intentions. It wasn't a bad thing, but there were a few moments where in my life I felt, geez, you've got to do this. We've got to do this now. Where someone could have said, like, hang on.
Yeah,
in music, for example, you can be Keith Richards, man. You can play guitar until you die.
And there's no age limit.
You can start looking at old characters.
Yeah, it's not. I think I think because I spent a lot of time now, working so much on the business, right? We were talking about before.
Yeah.
And part of that is, you have to understand the ecosystem. Like, your agent, and your agent has a worldview and a purview of your career and how they see it, and how they see themselves fitting into that. Your manager also has the same thing. They also have payroll and things like that they're doing.
Yeah.
So there are all these like entities that are all coming together to do this business together. Yeah.
They rely on you.
In some leveling degree. And when they see that, and it's very rare in Hollywood where you kind of get these opportunities to be, Yellowstone is like a once in a generational type of show. And so you don't want to sell that short, right? Which I definitely understood. But I also looked at it as being able to leverage what I'm doing into a blue ocean, right? Where instead of me coming and, going from Yellowstone, and maybe I could go and do another movie. And I did a couple of movies since then, or do another TV series. It was like, but I could potentially have greater impact in Africa. And looking at this as an opportunity to now be able to really kind of bridge the gap, what I would say, especially for the African-American diaspora, the European African diaspora, the Caribbean diaspora, to really start to paint the continent in a completely different light than how we grew up in the U.S. of what Africa is.
Yeah.
And that was an opportunity for me. And I love that opportunity. And again, it doesn't come from the savior complex. It comes from a true inquisitive nature that I have, and this kind of spiritual thing that I know has drawn me to the continent to live and to work and to build relationships. And now everything that I do in my life is like, how can we do this and just do it in Africa? Like, hey, we have this project. Great. Can we do it in Africa? And so then it's like coming over here and say, okay, let's create the infrastructure and create the this and create that so that more opportunities can come over here, because I don't want to have to go and do things in other places just because I love being here. And I feel so comfortable and confident about what the continent is. And yeah, so that's kind of been one of the biggest things. And, you know, fortunately in the last couple of years, it really, I don't think has hindered me. I think it's actually added more value add, because now it's given so many different people access to a market that they never even realized they could even have access to, you know. And
in which direction?
I would say from the US's perspective, you know, even in Africa, because it's an opportunity to where you're able to like talk to people about the opportunities that are here. Productions, television, you know, we were talking about one of the things we talk about currency, like the currency exchange, right? So you can do so many bigger things and have greater impact economically here, let's say in South Africa, than you could if you're shooting in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, and that blew my mind years ago when I was like, how is it cheaper to come all the way to Cape Town Film Studios or wherever you're going to shoot? How is that cheaper? And then you take a couple of trips to America and you're like, oh, I understand.
Yeah, all you have to do is land in an international airport in the U.S. and you're like, wow, this is, I mean, I remember I think it was in September, I was speaking at the Global Africa Business Summit, that's right, during the UN General Assembly week in New York. And I remember I had landed in Atlanta first and then flew into New York. And I remember like coming out of New York and like I was sitting down for a dinner and having like a glass of wine. Then I was like, oh, do you want a bottle? I was like, no, I'll just get a glass, whatever, and this. And then I remember looking at the thing, I was like, this is $25 for a glass of wine. And I remember sitting there and I'm going like,
so you starting to think like
I'm sitting
like
there and I'm like,
do.
guys, $25 for a glass of wine. Like I can spend $25 for a bottle of wine,
and
that's
really
nice, like
wine.
a really nice bottle of a blend of a red blend that I really like and enjoy, instead of something that I'm like, oh, it's just middle of the road. So it's very funny now. Like every time they're like, okay, you're gonna come back to the U.S., I'm sitting there. The first thing I'm thinking about is like how expensive the groceries are gonna be, the dinners, the this.
So funny
and like,
that you've started changing your head.
So it's just very interesting.
There's 2 points that are really interesting there. One, of course, is just realizing how much cheaper it would be to be in South Africa. But the second thing is realizing the quality. And that's perhaps the lesser spoken about difference, which is like, it's not a shit bottle of wine.
No.
This is from one of the greatest wine-producing regions in the world.
Yes, like you're going to get something from Lawrenceburg or from Peter Falk or from Babylon Store, and it's like...
It could even be the same bottle of wine we're talking about here.
It's like these are real, these are real great bottles of wine that win international awards. Yeah. You know, and, you know, in the U.S., you're paying $150, $200 a bottle, you know, for that, and hopefully you'll like it. Yeah. You know, but I think it's just those types of things, you know, and of course, just being able to be here and being an artist, I spend a lot of time on the producing side now.
Okay.
You know, because it's something that I love.
What are the other things that you're doing?
So we, you know, one of the things that we decided to start doing. So Bangla and I, when we got together, and we have 2 other partners, was saying like, look, yes, we have this great product offering, this very unique product offering with him as a director and producer, with myself as an actor and producer. But we also wanted to start investing in the entire entertainment industry value chain. Right, okay. Where it's like it's not just television or film, right? There's artists, there's music, right? There's luxury brands, there's clothing, there's all these different things that is an amalgamation when you're watching a movie or a television show that make up a scene, right? The paintings that's in the background, right? So who are the artists that are in that background? Who painted those things? Or the bag was that a local luxury designer? Right, so there's all these different things that we were like, you know, we can start investing in them. And then also when we're creating shows and movies, they can all be a part of that ecosystem. Okay. And so I'm very, very big about the African ecosystem, because the entertainment industry is the only industry in the world that actually employs all industries, right? Because you have attorneys that are a part of it, accountants, right? You have food, agriculture, right? Catering. security, drivers, fuel. So it's all these different things that don't have anything to do that you're looking at when you're watching a movie. You're not thinking about the 75 trucks that are on set right now that all need to be gassed up, right? Or, the drivers that are making money based off of that. So there's an entire ecosystem. And I think that, number one, it started from having a much larger appreciation that you as an actor are not the soul of the universe when you come onto a set, that there's so many things, mechanisms that make it go.
And you had the chance to see that.
Yeah.
Because you were exposed to this, probably this huge machine with Yellowstone.
Yes.
And you were, it's the Plato's cave theory. Like your worldview had changed and you were like, I can't go back.
100%.
I can't go back to just seeing it like this. It's now a much wider worldview, and I need to share that. Because I'm lucky enough to have seen it. Yeah.
To what you're saying, it's like, even for Yellowstone, it's not only just the sets, but it's, the horses and the cattle and all the people that are not even a part of the entertainment industry that are now, based upon what they do for a living, now find themselves thrust into the largest show in the world, right? There's like, well, now you're having ranchers that, we have 500 head of cattle. They're sit in this field somewhere over there. Like, hey, we'd like to use that for a scene, and you guys can be in it. They're like, what is this? Right? And now they find themselves thrust in it. So when you do that, you look at yourself, an artist is obviously important to story and narrative, but it's just about, like, there's so many other aspects to making a camera turn on than just the camera turning on. Everything just exists. Yeah. And so I think that there's so much opportunity. And part of that is about, one of the things on the continent, but it's really a universal thing, a universal kind of situation, but they've kind of used it more in Africa, like unemployment, right? Yeah. And in Africa, there's very high youth unemployment and unemployment in general. And for me, it's one of those opportunities where you can come into the entertainment ecosystem and have a job. And it didn't require you to have to go to a university. It didn't matter about what family you grew up in, what your social and economic standing was. It's something that doesn't really segregate in that same regard that so many other, I would say, industries often do. Like, you have to be able to afford to go to law school, right? You don't have to. Sure. You can get onto a film set and be a PA or production assistant and have no real understanding of how the entertainment industry works. Yeah. But then find yourself like being able to at least go and get a cup of coffee and work your way up the ranks. So to me, it became this thing where it's like, you know what, this is something that if we do this right and we do it at scale, it's a tremendous opportunity to be able to solve some unemployment issues.
It's amazing. And of course, these all sound like also such big things on a more micro level. How do you make it work? Are you able to sort of, from these bigger things that you've done, that looks after you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the biggest. It's a really interesting question. One of the things, because we took about maybe a year and 2 months off of Yellowstone, like. There's an actor strike that was happening in the U.S. and that shut everything down for 10 months, and then this. And so when people in and around me that maybe don't know me personally, but maybe see me at an event or speaking at something or whatever, the first thing that they always want to know is like, how is this sustainable? Like, how is it that, he's here, we're seeing that he's now in Kenya or he's in Nigeria or he's in Egypt and he's in Trinidad. He's in all these different places doing these things. Because
it's great to talk about how we can give unemployed people jobs on sets. But it's like how do we make it work?
How do we like how does and again it's a thing for me where like I said, for me this is like my calling. Right. So to me, when I'm saying this, I've been doing it for so long now that I don't necessarily always hear how it sounds, where it sounds like very big. Like there was a lady that I met over when we were doing the Joburg Film Festival, and I think she asked me a question. I think I maybe told her like 3 things that I was doing, like to me very like mainline, like if we were just sitting at a coffee shop and getting some tea in line, like that was it. And for her, she thought it was like a fraud, like I was like a con artist, like there was just no way that I could be doing all of these different things. And I was like, is that a lot? Like because I just spent time. But what I think it is like I spend all of my time doing this, right? So like it's not a hobby. It's not a thing that I like passively do. So I spend all of my time racking my brain. How do we take, like you said, like how do we, now you've seen this massive model, right? Now you've seen this world that's been introduced to you. Now how do we scale it down to size and start with the first step, right? And the first thing is about being able to, number one, have a plan. And number two, then being able to say, okay, who are the intentional people that you need to now get around or partner with so that this can be the thing? Because it's like, it's that cliche, like the road to 10,000 steps starts with the first step or whatever that is. Yeah. It is very much like that. And I think that for our demographic and our age range now, I think that we've lost the love and the passion for the process, and we're just about the outcome. Sure. And for me, because I grew up playing sports, and some of the athletes that I really have always admired, like the Michael Jordans or the Kobe Bryants, they had an incisiveness to their detail in their work. Like they loved being able to be a part of practice. They loved getting up early in the morning. They loved being in the gym when everybody else was sleeping. They loved going to the gym when everybody else was out partying. Yeah. They just love it, right? And so for me, I was like, I genuinely love it. And I love how daunting it makes everybody else feel, because I'm like, when it happens, you're going to sit there and think, like, there's no way that I could have done it. But one of the things I think in my mind is what you shouldn't be doing is don't allow your limitations, right? Don't allow your limitations for yourself to become my limitations. Those are not going to become my reality. Just because you never saw it for yourself doesn't now mean that that's me, right? Because I don't look at myself like that. I don't look at any of these things as being daunting. I look at it like, look, if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to go through all the rejection, like if I shared the amount of rejections, like I had one meeting where I was telling people just to get a letter of intent from this network, I had to message this guy 26 times, right? 26 times just so I can get a meeting so I could talk about the letter of intent, right? And it was like, and he just would never respond because he's just always doing other things. And I'm like, 3 days a week, I'm just constantly sending messages over the course of months. And I was incessant. I didn't care because I truly believe that I have something that you want and I don't want you to miss out on that. So I don't care how many times I need to message you because I don't feel like I'm bothering you because I got something that you want. Maybe you don't know that you want it yet, but I promise
I'm going to take the time to tell you.
Yeah. But if I could just get the opportunity to do it. So it's just those types of things, a lot of mind games that I play with myself, but I feel like those are the things that kind of give me the edge. And it's something that I feel like a lot of people don't want to do, which makes me excited, which also it could be a very lonely road, right? Because you don't really have a lot of people that you can necessarily sit down and talk with about it. But you're like, oh, well, like who, like, again, it's one of those things like whoever told you it was going to be easy, who told you it was always going to be fun, right? This is a part of a bigger thing that's bigger than yourself. So get after it.
Lovely. Well, I think what's good is that we've painted this picture of who you are now. And I'd love to see how you've gotten there. Yeah. And we keep talking about career. We keep talking about other things along the way. But let's just start with that childhood. Yeah. In California. What was a film that came to you like out the gate?
Lion King. It's the first.
Lovely.
It's like the easiest.
The puppy love film. It's a lovely one.
It's
and it makes a lot of sense because for those who've just taken the last sort of 20 odd minutes to meet you for the first time, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That manifested something, whether you knew about it or not, you needed to go.
Connect, yeah.
We took it for granted, to be somewhat honest, as an African kid, but it was, just something so beautiful and just done so well.
Well, there's so many, when you watch it when you're older, as a kid, I loved it because I grew up doing, singing and all these other things. And so, of course, it's a musical.
Because you can sing. You've been in musicals.
I started at 5 years old singing. And so, and going up the thing. So it was easy to be able to, to connect with. And of course, like I loved the songs and I loved the lions and all these others. So my African name is Tao, and Tao means lion.
When did you get the African name?
It was actually when I was doing when I had my first official meeting with the president of Botswana. And when I walked into his office, he had said in Setswana, like, who is this Tao? Right. And
you said, what did it mean again?
Tao means lion. So it means lion in Setswana. And then that became my African name was Lion.
How soon upon arriving did you get to meet the president?
Again, not again. I'm glad that you asked that question because What I want to put to bed is that Denim landed in Botswana and the president picked him up from the airport and then they were hanging out. No. It was about 3 years.
After a while he was like, wait, who is this guy?
Yeah, it was because I had done a presentation for FNB on the budget speech review. And it was the first time in 28 years and of the 28 years of existence of FNB that they ever had somebody from the entertainment space speak on the financial ecosystem of the entertainment industry.
Oh, wow.
And so they had invited me to go and speak, and that was when like all the ministers from all the sectors in government were all there. And the Minister of Entrepreneurship was very impressed and very blown away by the thing, and he called the president the same day because he had asked him like, how did it go? And it was like, look, there's this gentleman that was there that made this presentation. I think you need to hear this. And so then literally the next day,
cool.
they were like, bring him into the office. We need to have a conversation. So the Lion King was my kind of calling card. Yeah.
Lovely. But one of the things that you've just raised was something we chatted earlier about, which is that, as you've said, you've used your experience to best show people that the entertainment industry isn't a complete myth.
Right.
And we were just saying earlier that a good example is something like personal fitness, where a personal trainer will do his level best to make it sound quite mystical,
right,
quite scientific to the point that you can't understand it.
Yeah, it's just beyond
and that's why you need them to
unlock it for you.
To unlock it for you. And so there are those gatekeepers, there are those needle swingers that you said, but for the most part, people think it's this myth. And people love to give it that aura.
Well, we need it. You need it in order to
and the
make
magic of it all. But
But I think that's also something that's actually working against a lot of artists, right? Because one of the things is like you've made something so ethereal, and then when it comes time to actually having a conversation about it, the only thing that you lean on is, well, why should we invest in this project? Well, because I'm passionate about it. Or because I feel like it's a story that you want to be told. Those are all buzzwords that people in financial industries don't want to hear. They don't want to hear about your passion, and they don't want to hear about you feel like it's something. What they want you to be passionate about is the return on investment, right? Like be passionate about the numbers, right? Like feel like getting the actual R&D, the research and development, feel like doing that. Yeah. And so I think those are the kind of things that for me that I realized, because I was like, how is it that, by being on a show like Yellowstone, I'm watching all the mechanisms that are happening, and I'm sitting there going, this is really expensive. And there's people that are sitting in offices that never come to this show that are making some of these decisions. What is going in their mind? And so then what I would do, whenever there would be like an event or red carpet or anything, they would be like, oh yeah, these are the people from Viacom that are there. And I would just go and sit with them. And I wouldn't talk. I wouldn't have anything to say. And I just wanted to hear what they were talking about. And what I would never hear them talking about is like, oh, the passion for the actor or the passion for this. They're talking about like, okay, we have to do these types of numbers and we have to do this. And this is how we're going to market it. And this is how we're going to package it. This is how we're going to scale it to get into this market and that market. And my mind was just blown because I was sitting there from an actor's point of view. I'm thinking about like the A, B, and C's of me, right? And like what I want and how I feel and what I could be doing better and there's like a much larger ecosystem of like, oh, this is why you choose this type of an actor for this project because it helps you get into this market or it gets you access to that market. These are things that you never think about. So when I started to get a little bit more interested and I would say more informed, I think it's helped me become a much better artist because when I have general meetings with either directors or producers, half the time they think that we go into it talking about acting and then like 10 minutes in, all of a sudden we're talking about the business, right? Okay. And now they're like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Like Denim's like, he knows about the acting side of it, but he really like gets the business side. And I'm still learning every day. So I think that's one of those things. But now I think here on the continent, I think it's in our best interest to learn a little bit more about the business side so that you can get more government institutions that are interested in it, but they're not going to be interested in it if you're not even an expert in the business that you're saying that you want them to invest in. Yeah.
Lovely. Now over to high school. We've got the High School Crush.
Yeah, so now the High School Crush. This is
still in California? Where are you?
still in California, still in Los Angeles. Okay, it's a weird one because it wasn't really like a movie. There weren't movies at this time. These were like, there was a musical called Wicked.
Sure. Okay. And we're gonna get the film version of it. Later this year.
Yes. So the film version is coming out later this year. I think probably around the holiday. I imagine
it's going to be a Christmas thing.
It feels very much in that. That's what I would do if I was marketing it.
And that's what's
So then
happening.
that's So I would say in my high school years, everything was musicals and opera.
But specifically, being in the theater.
Yes, like so everything was rather it was Les Miserables or Wicked or everything was that. So it wasn't really about movies in my house. Everything in my life was about. It had to be either I was in a musical or I was watching a musical or I was studying a musical or I was watching an opera. Right. So those were like, I needed that so badly because I was training for like 8 hours a day, singing for 8 hours a day, training all the time incessantly for that because, I grew up kind of in a conservatory aspect. So it was like, on the weekends, 9 to 5, 9 to 7, that's what you were doing, singing, acting and dancing. And then during the week, you were singing or acting or dancing or going to auditions.
And it was something you wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Okay,
it was
wasn't
a necessity.
It was.
Yeah.
Was it entirely you? Or was
it was entirely me. Nobody in my family really understood it. They thought that. I think when I was younger, I think they thought it was like a phase maybe that I went into. But then, when I was 14, it was a thing where I was like, oh, this is like I love this, and I didn't even know what I loved about it. Well, actually, that's not true. When I was in 8th grade, I think I was like 12 or 13 years old. I had missed some days of school, and there was a time where you got to pick your electives, right?
Okay.
So it was during the time, so it was like you had to be at school on Wednesday and Thursday so that you could start to pick your Friday electives. So because I had missed these days of school, they picked it for you. So when you came back, you're like, hey, so all of my best friends are going to be doing dodgeball or painting, whatever it was. And they're like, Denim, you're going to be in drama. And I was like, drama? Right? And I was like, there's nobody else. Like, I'm the only guy now that's going to be in drama. And then I realized when I got to drama, I was like, but all the girls are here. And this isn't actually all that bad.
But wait, but why weren't you there to pick it?
Because I was sick. I think I was sick. I just hadn't come to school.
Okay,
yeah, because you had to be there to pick it. Like, those were the 2 days that you had to, where you got a list and you got to pick it, but you had to be in school. And I just happened to not be there the days when that was happening.
But this is before you've been joining conservatories and doing stuff. So this was perhaps the start.
Because I had started. So I started when I was 5 years old. The first, I think I sang in front of a crowd of like 300 or 600 people. I can't remember the numbers. When I was 5 years old, that was like my first opening to performing when I was singing in front of this auditorium. And then I was in these massive plays that I was doing 7 days a week. We were doing like 9 shows a week. And we're performing in front of 1,000 people.
But if you were able to have chosen your elective, wouldn't you have chosen drama?
No, I wanted to be with my friends. I just wanted to be with my friends.
But you were doing drama at that point.
Yeah,
so
that was the thing. It was like I was doing it at night. So when I would leave school, I was going to do a performance.
Okay, so you were like, I didn't need to do it at school as well.
I want to go be with my friends. You're right. So that was and also it was like, it wasn't that bug didn't really fully encapsulate me yet. It was a thing that I did. And I still loved because I loved being on stage. I loved the attention that I got from being on stage.
Okay.
But I still wanted to like go and play basketball and play football and, play video games.
Just a sort of fun.
It felt like a hobby, right? That I just happened to be very good at. But still needed refining and all these other things. But because I didn't grow up in a family that cultivated that or even knew what cultivating that would even look like, it wasn't like they could pick up the phone and be like, hey, get them with the best people. They didn't know. So we were all learning this thing together, and I'm like navigating this when I'm 12, 13 years old. But then I had a teacher, I remember at the end of that semester, and she pulled me aside, and she was like, never quit this. I still remember that conversation where she was like, you're really good at this. Don't stop doing this. And I was like, okay. And then I went and played basketball. Like, okay, sure, teacher. Right. I'm going to go play basketball now. But that stuck with me. And then as I got into high school, and I realized like this is something that I really love doing. And I love that it's scary, it's hard, it's nerve-wracking.
And so you love the fact that you were automatically put in this class.
Yeah,
because
because now you're like thrust in all
formalized
of this.
It in a way.
Yeah,
for you. Okay.
and made it something that was approachable, right? And then when I started getting into these conservatories and doing that, it was so hard because it was like I wouldn't say I had natural gifts in acting, but I was not a naturally gifted vocalist. So like it was hard for me to hear pitches and hard for me. And then when my nerves would get into the thing, I was always singing off pitch. It wasn't because I couldn't sing. It was like I would get so nervous that I'm so insular.
Those two are so finally
in
entwined.
tune, right? And so if you like, as you know, like somebody that's been done music, if you're nervous, you can't hear anything because you're so internalized.
And the best example is also comedy.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable,
good luck.
You're never going to be funny.
You just can't. So by being thrusted in this, it kind of forced me, and then becoming a vocalist outside of that, and then training as an opera singer. So all these different things became that. Then as I got out of high school and I guess more into like the university era, the young adult era.
This is the next. This is the next category.
The next category.
So
what
perhaps,
is it?
Perhaps. Sorry, just for high school, we can say it was perhaps the musical.
Yes,
the movie
music,
versions
yes.
of these musicals that you probably did watch.
Yes.
In training
training for those
actually
things.
being on the theater. Okay?
And on the thing.
The next one is called It's Getting Serious, which is when things do get more serious.
Yeah.
Where it's not just about a drama teacher saying, "Oh, you're pretty good. You should like stick it out." Now it's becoming real.
Yeah. What is this?
Where
now?
it's like the relationship is just that much more
right.
real.
It's a much more. It's a
where
much
it's
more
like,
intentional.
okay, we're not just seeing each other on the weekends. Like now we're living together. Like,
now we're gonna do that. There might be something here.
Yeah. So curious, what films might have come at that point?
So I mean, I had so many films that I really loved during that time. Some that had come out before that I only got exposed to when I was when I was older. But like movies like The Green Mile come to mind. Men of Honor, which is my favorite movie still today.
Okay. Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr. Robert De Niro, Charlize Theron.
It was the true life story
Yes.
of the first black
of the first black naval officer that was a master naval diver.
Yes.
So
it's the old school scuba diving when you were in that kind of big encased
it's like
suit.
a 200-pound, at that time when he had to do it after he got his leg amputated, a 300-pound suit that you had to be able to walk in.
Above the ground as a way to test whether you could do it underwater.
And this was during this time when he had to get his leg amputated. So he was doing this on an amputated leg with a prosthetic. And that was so Men of Honor still to me, and the reason I can speak about it with a little bit more, I would say in depthness, because I literally just watched it 2 days ago. Because I was like, I usually watch it maybe like once every couple of years just to see like, is it still my favorite movie? And it's still, and it's even as I get older, it's more triggering for me. And I think that it's triggering in an emotional standpoint because it's the beauty of watching a man from a very early age not want to let his father down, and that was like a very big thing because one of the things if you watch his movie, his father was a cattleman who was working the fields, the 40 acres and a mule type of thing. And, his father, would have the scars on his hands, bloody, just all day, just trying to keep the house by, just plowing fields. And then, Kuba's character gets an opportunity now to go and join the Naval Academy, but he's going to go and he's going to be a chef. He's going to be a cook, right?
Yeah.
But his father says to him before he gets on the thing, like, never come back here. And when you think about don't quit on me, right? And he says that, like, whenever you think about quitting, don't quit on me. And that just stuck. And then he gives him this radio, this makeshift radio that his dad, that they had used in the house. The only thing that they could afford, that was this makeshift thing that he gives it to his son to go on there. And on the side of it, it says, what is it? It's like the acronym that stands for like NSVF or something like that. And it's something along the lines like a son never forgets. It's something like that.
Okay.
And the film was just so well done. But when Kuba's going through all of the trauma of not being able to even be let in and being staying outside and water being poured on him in the middle of the night and all these other things that really happened to this man. It's this thing, if he thought about quitting so many times, then the only thing he could think about is like, I just can't quit on my father. And what that meant. And so for me, I look at those things of like, we have all of these things that happen in life, but sometimes you just have to find the one thing that keeps you going.
It's the tenacity of it.
Yeah, and so I love that.
There's the scene in Men of Honor. It's funny, I haven't thought about it in a long time, where as you said, he's got to make these steps
Yes.
in this heavy suit.
Yes.
And this is one step in the way in which he's going to become the certified scuba diver.
the master diver.
And just him not giving up, as you said.
Just can't.
And it's just so funny that translates to like not giving up messaging some guy about the intention for a movie. It's just understanding like it's all in the tenacity.
It is. It's and part of that was like even when he got in, they got reinstated him because he already was a naval officer, but they wanted him to retire. But he wanted to be a master chief. That was the whole thing. He wanted to be a master chief, and so he finally got reinstated, became a master chief, and then didn't retire for another 9 years. Right. So he was the master chief for 9 years on a prosthetic leg. Who they told him. He told the doctors, cut this leg off, put a prosthetic on, and I can do this thing. Right? So it was literally like when you're watching the movie and they're saying, they're going, hey, enjoy your retirement, enjoy life. And he's sitting there going, but I haven't accomplished the goal. Like the goal hasn't been accomplished. Everybody's celebrating, eulogizing my career, and I haven't accomplished anything. So take my leg, cut it off. Here's where it says that this can happen. Go and do it, and I'll make it work. So for me, I think that was those are types of things that kind of planted seeds in my younger adult years. And then we also have things like, Ocean's 11 and things like fun things. I was like, man, how fun it would be to like do movies with your friends. Right. Yeah. Like, because it's like they're all kind of, Brad Pitt and all of them all did movies together, George Clooney, and had known each other in these circles for so many years. And so that was always like kind of fun. But there was those opportunities where now you had to look at it and go, what can you see yourself in? Right, because now as you start to become a young adult and you actually want to do this, you're not going to be in Ocean's 11 with Brad Pitt and with all these these are A-listers that all in their own right that all decided to come together and make a fun movie together, right? So now you have to start to kind of ground yourself a little bit and say, okay, you're probably not going to you might be in a Disney original movie. Right, you have to start to ground yourself in the age of where you are.
Yeah, I've been in that in my 30s, which is great, which is lovely. Like, I remember we took this break as a band and we all did our own personal things, which was lovely. We reassessed our whole life, and I was also like, whatever I choose to do, it's got to be something I can do.
Yeah,
that I can like actually
that you can actually do.
Yes, and so for me, I started the clothing company, which is there in the lobby, where I was like, this is what I could do.
I can do this.
I could do this for the rest of my life.
It's sustainable, right?
Sustainable
you're now
me.
Thinking about sustainability.
Yeah.
And but it's funny, right? It's like the difference.
And I know
my
limitations. I'm not going to design, so I'm just going to more take the blank clothes, and it's going to be more about the designs. I'm not going to cut the fashion myself.
Prints on top, and things, sustainability. Like, and it's so funny because it goes that transition from I'm just passionate about something. So then you're passionate because it's not focused. It's just anything that you feel, right? Everything's about your feeling. Then as you start to get older, it becomes about like anchoring yourself. What is something that I can do consistently that I'm not going to be having to take these 3 months, 6 months breaks that are also not continuously reliant on somebody else saying yes, right? And it also becomes about that as well. Right, because especially as you start to get older, if you're like, okay, maybe I want to settle down, maybe I want to have kids, maybe I want to, you have to start looking at it like I can't feed my kids an audition.
Yeah, well,
right?
that's Jesus. That was the same with the band, where I was like, I love these guys, and we've got this great rapport, and this break was very necessary. But I was like, I can't live my life based on the moods and the hopes and dreams of four other guys
that somebody's going to say yes to.
I need this to be entirely my own. And
you have to have that, and I think that. For a lot of artists, that's why I was telling you before we were on that, I say this thing every time I go that your passion's going to make you poor, and I say that I say it knowing that it's triggering for people, and I do it very intentionally. But I do that because it's about the thing of saying that your passion is a prerequisite, the same way that oxygen is, right? For the everyday individual, nobody walks around and says like, "Ooh, I have oxygen." Like we just breathe the oxygen. It's part of what we know. And so being passionate is what gets you into the industry, but that's not going to keep you in the industry, and that sure as heck not going to make you successful. So you have to kind of be able to understand what it is and understand where you are, like what in business they talk or investing, they talk about what your risk tolerance is, right? What is your risk tolerance? Are you married? Do you have social economic responsibility? Do you have children? All of those things factor into your ability to scale or to take more risks, right? Like, so if I'm saying like, hey, I'm going to be in a traveling band, but we're not, I don't even know bands like the Blink 182, right? Yeah. And maybe we have to go and do a couple of, cafes and stuff like that around Europe, around the U.S., but I have 4 kids and a wife. That's
different. Yeah.
Probably not something that I can do in expecting that my family's going to be able to live a lifestyle that is conducive to the kids being able to be in sports and this, that, and the third, because most of my fees are just going to be in airlines alone or this.
Yeah.
So you start to think about, okay.
And so could we say that you're quite high risk, high reward? Because you don't have dependables?
So
Can I assume that? Sorry.
Yeah,
you don't have kids, eh?
Yes, I do. I do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes, I do. I have, but my thing is that I'm high risk, but I'm very calculated. So I take very high calculated risks. I'm the person that's like, if you call me and say like, hey, I want to start a coffee shop, I'm not that guy. But if you come to me and say you want to start 10,000 coffee shops, now that's interesting. Because I can justify that in my head. Because the amount of work that I have to do for one coffee shop is the same amount of work I'm going to have to do for 10,000. The model's still the same. So for me, I am very calculated in the things that I do, but I will never allow any of the risks that I take to impede on my responsibilities that I have as a father. Okay. Right?
Where do they stay?
They're in Botswana. Yeah,
oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm very what would I say? I'm very intentional about that. And it's a legacy for me. And so those things are very, very important because it's another thing that occurs, another blessing that happens where it's, again, something bigger than you. Like I've been always very big about getting out of, like I keep saying this, the ABCs of me. Everything's about me. And so if I constantly find things that are bigger than me, it can never be about me. And everything has to be bigger. And so that means I have to rise to the occasion because everything is about bigger. Otherwise, if I didn't have any real responsibilities and I wasn't thinking about things that were bigger, I didn't really tap into the blessings that I know that I was called for, I could just retire. I could just kind of hang out. I could go do Yellowstone, go and buy a villa somewhere on the coastal line of Kenya, right? And just hang out and, just chill. Yeah. But that's just not my calling. But right?
Can we perhaps say, because I just to in some sense start wrapping up the fact that because we can talk about this forever,
course,
and I would love to just keep talking with you, but I do understand your time is important. Can we safely say then that did you create those roots in Botswana?
Yeah.
Then? So these kids were
they're in Botswana. My children are in Botswana. Yeah.
So they were made from your visit here. Yeah. It's not that they were transported.
No, they
across.
were not. They were not transported from the
so
U.S.
So how lovely that this kind of one-time trip.
Yeah.
Turned
into a forever. Yeah.
There is a foreverness there.
100%. No, like it's my one of the things that I say, and I say even selfishly for me, is that there's people that come from, I would say, Europe, the Americas and all these other places around the world that come to Africa looking to, make money, exploit something, right?
Yeah. A lot of it is to take away the Russian and Chinese agenda.
It's just, it's very, you just come in, do it, and then take it somewhere else.
Take the minerals or the artifacts.
And take it out or start a business and let the business go, and then I'll check in every quarter, flying on my private plane to a thing and, to make sure there's no dust in the whatever, and then I'll fly out again. I came again very intentionally, where it was like this is what this was a change of my life. It wasn't I'm gonna come because I couldn't make it in the U.S. I couldn't make it in Hollywood, and so I had to flee to another place. It was a place it was a calling in my heart and in my spirit to come and to be able to give myself fully over to the continent in whatever that looked like for the continent. Yeah. And I was willing for that to be the case. If it worked in Botswana, then great. If it worked in Kenya, then great. If it worked in Nigeria, wherever it could work is where I wanted it to be. But I knew, hey, there's 54 countries on the continent. There's a country here for me.
Yeah,
sure. I'm not tripping about that. So I was never worried about that. So so I'm very happy and very blessed about what has been the last 4 years.
And is there still a connection back in the States? I mean, can you still go work there?
I'll be leaving next week. I'll be going next week to be filming the last part of 5B of Yellowstone. So we'll be filming that at the end of May.
In my ignorance, I thought it had finished.
No. We're still going. Yeah. We're not done.
I thought it had ended.
No. So we'll be back. So I was actually just talking to the team on the way in. So speaking of the connections to the States. So, I'll be speaking at the U.S. Africa Business Summit in Texas Also be going to the stuff in Washington, D.C. for the IMF and the World Bank. And then after that, I'll be in New York for 2 weeks doing Upfront, which is all the press stuff for Yellowstone. So we'll be there, and then we'll be in Montana.
So you're still
filming.
very much in that machine.
Yeah. There's the machine. So it's like there's no the value, and I'm also the director for media, arts, and culture for the African Union for Global, and that's for the diaspora and for Africa, for projects and documentaries and commercials and all these other things.
Okay.
So my connection between the diaspora and Africa will always be there. It just will happen to be that the place that I call home is Africa, and the place that I go to work and to build certain things will be outside of the continent, while also doing it inside the continent. But when people say like, "Hey, you're going home," when I think of it, I'm thinking about Africa. I'm not thinking like Los Angeles.
Yeah,
right?
because
So,
just the sheer fact that you're doing the maths, realizing how expensive that bottle of wine is, tells me that your brain has shifted.
What?
But
100%.
That's so funny, and it's so great to also hear that there's going to be more Yellowstone, because to be perfectly honest, so when we met and had this initial chat, Yellowstone hadn't come to South Africa yet.
Right.
So it was all very exciting, and then immediately after recording, I thought I'd lost the episode, blah 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 blah, and then I did lose the episode.
Right.
Then it came to South Africa, and it was very popular.
Started on
and
Mnet
to be
and Showmax.
And to be honest, I personally boycotted it because I was like, I don't want to see this really talented actor whose episode I lost.
So it's not there.
Okay, so now we've got it in the bank.
Now it's there,
and there's more to come. So now,
there's more.
Now
you're
I'm going
free.
to actually watch
Now
you in
you're
Yellowstone.
free, and there's five seasons. So there's it's a nice thing. So we'll be back. So there's still ties there, and there's be a lot of exciting announcements that we'll be doing as well.
You still got to film stuff.
Yeah. We still have, we're going to be doing. We have more episodes that we're going to be filming. So we're going back. We'll be back in Montana. On the horse and everything.
How's your horse?
My horse is great. Now,
what was the horse's name again?
Gosh, now.
If you got a few horses.
I have a couple of horses, and now if hopefully nobody from Yellowstone watches, because now I'm like, I don't even know my horse's name because it's been like 18 months.
It's been a while.
But the first 2 seasons, I had a terrible horse. Okay. Right. So when you watch the show, you'll be seeing like we'll be riding up to a stop and having a conversation, and my horse is gallivanting around and like just jittery like all the time. It like gave them, I don't know what type of espresso they gave this horse every single time. And then once we got to season 3, 4, and 5, I have a horse that matches very much my demeanor, very, very chilled, but likes to get after it. So we'll be back on the horse very soon. So I'll be done away with all the gear, and it'll be a cowboy hat and and boots and what the proverbial back in the saddle. We will actually
be quite literal.
We'll be very literal. Yeah.
Lovely, man. Okay, well, I wish you the best for that.
Thank you.
And then, of course, it's important to mention that you've got a space.
Yes.
And that's what I've sort of always offered.
Yes.
In trying to get you back.
Yes.
It was lovely that you came back out of your own. I don't know what led to it, but you held one of the master classes.
Yes, very intentionally.
A few weeks ago, and it was great to set a date for this. For this re-recording.
And I'm glad that I could commit to the date, and I'm happy about that.
But you've always got a space.
Thank you.
It's a 47-seater, so it is quite small, but you've got the bioscope that can always be a part of whatever it is.
I think that's important. I think, and one of the things that we will be doing is part of our investment in the value chain of that is being able to also be able to have artists be able to see their work, right, and display it on a theater, and so that they can see it outside of their phone or their computer, but actually sit in a place where they can get popcorn and a drink and a red carpet and have the experience, right? Like nobody cares when you're in a movie theater how many people can sit in the movie theater. They just care about the fact of when they look up, everybody becomes like a child again and they get to see the screen. Yeah. I think that's the thing that's important. So I appreciate that.
And you can imagine understanding and seeing that industry open up, even for someone like myself, where at film school I was like, oh, what's the point of all of us making movies if there's no place to show it?
We're never going to see it. Where will they go? Yeah, where will it go?
Where there's a space that has the capacity and the focus to screen local stuff.
And I think, and again, just I know as we're wrapping up, that's really at the Opulent Entertainment Group for us, that's one of our biggest things, which is like it's the intentionality where it's like, everybody can't be an actor. Everybody can't be a writer. Everybody can't be a director, nor should they be, because there's so many other things that are tremendously important to the value chain, right? Like being able to say, I have a theater space. I have this. These are all things that are intricately important and connected to that. Otherwise, you're shooting something and you're like, okay, who's going to watch it? Where will we see it, right? So you have to be into marketing. So I think for anybody that when they watch this or they listen to this, if you're interested in the business of entertainment, to look at it past just the purview.
Look left, look right.
Yeah, like don't just look at the horizontal, look at the verticals of all these other things that take in and see how you can kind of lend yourself into that, and we'd be happy to have you.
If you love horses, for example, there's someone right now who's busy grooming a horse that's ready to take you.
That's ready to go. 100%.
But that's someone's livelihood.
Yeah, but that's somebody that makes money off of like those types of things. So we can go on and on forever. So thank you so much for having me. Hopefully we'll do another one when I come back from the US, just like lovely. A recap of everything from the show. And that would be exciting to do as well.
Lovely.
All right,
thank you for your time.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.
Cheers. All right. What a good chat. I am just so grateful to have it.
Yes.
To have it in my hands, on the cloud, on platforms, after over a year of it just having disappeared.
Slipped through your fingers.
Jesus. No, it felt right. It was the right one to have as our 100th episode. Just because it was the one that
got away.
Yeah, the one that I thought about the most. But
I remember that. You lost sleep over that.
Yeah.
It was fucking annoying, to be honest. And it was just one of those that, you one of those moments in life where you wish you had a time machine.
Yes.
Like legitimately, like your brain's anxiety and the way in which you deal with those kinds of moments is like in your head pretending you had a time machine. Right. Where you're like, if only I did this, if only I did that. And you're like, you don't have a time machine. No one arrived at the party that Stephen Hawken threw.
Yes.
So we can't do this. We can't fix that. So all you can do is look forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of weird time warps and time holes,
okay,
let's I think get into The Boy and the Heron.
Oh, cool. That was a good segue.
Hey.
I was like, where is it going?
Without giving too much away. And I think this is a tricky one. So The Boy and the Heron is the exciting new Miyazaki film. He's the godfather of Japanese animation. And it's come out in the rest of the world, and it was a little bit late in South Africa for a bunch of reasons that I think are a little complicated, but basically I think no one was able to get the rights for cinema until now. Our good friends Gravel Road took it. And so
Heroes.
So they have it for a cinema release.
It's 2 gold stars for Gravel Road. It's the Old Boy 4K re-release and Boy and The Heron.
Nice. So I think they pick it up, where they can. We can get into that a little bit later. But basically a film has a long trajectory. It starts with cinema, which is the quickest and the best way to make your money back. But then you make your money in other things. It used to be the DVD sales. Now that's more the VOD, which is the Netflixes and the streamings and the box office. And if you can't get all the aspects down the line, it doesn't necessarily make you as much money in the long term. So I think Boy and the Heron was caught up in different deals, which made it difficult for a cinema release. Because no one wanted to take it just for cinema. But if you get the right price, which obviously perhaps that's what happened, it's now possible. So it's starting in cinemas this Friday, in the week that this episode's being released.
So what's that, the 19th?
It's the 19th. Okay. And the majority of actually all the screenings of the Bioscope this coming weekend have sold out.
I love
That is
Russ's
cool.
big smile. His big grin.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
It is exciting because you were talking about getting that for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now it's finally here and it's working.
Yes, and it's just such a perfect Bioscope film. I mean, I've spoken
Yeah.
about that a lot this year when films come and it's always interesting to see whether it could potentially be a Bioscope film. What is a Bioscope film? That's also very kind of difficult to define. But something like Boy and The Heron out the gate just has to be and is,
Yeah.
which is the fact that it is from this master
Yeah.
master of filmmaking. Having been lucky enough to go to Japan, I can get a sense of the intention of his filmmaking.
Right.
Speaking of intention, after this Denim episode, but it's like he goes in with such a serious, solid vision.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, it's not like they don't just bang them out.
Yeah.
You don't get the feeling that like, oh, let's just bang out another animation.
Yes.
Totally. There's this sense that he's stayed up at night thinking, I have to tell this story.
Yeah.
And
Well, literally
every-
in retirement going, I have to tell the story. Comes out of retirement.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that Miyazaki we've known for decades. Previous films like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle and Princess Mononoke. These are films, for those who don't know, these are films that win at Cannes. These are films that get Oscars. So they might not necessarily be household names in Western households like Pixar movies or Disney movies. But for those who know them, they are absolutely beloved.
Yes.
and treasured as pieces of art. And I think, and perhaps here's a little segue, could it be wrong to call it anime? Does that make sense? So I think people have a perception of what anime is.
Yes.
And I think it's broad. I think it basically just is intended to stand for Japanese animation.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think the term anime and like anime geek, whatever,
Yes.
has come to also represent like the crazy action and the silly and the Pokemon and the
Yeah.
and to call this anime might be a bit derivative. Is
I
that
don't
right?
think it is. I think those anime people, so you're thinking of the animes that take popular shonen mangas and adapt them into anime battle manga series, you know,
Yes.
like the Naruto's, the One Pieces, the Bleach.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who's precious about that definition needs to shut up.
Well, no, it's not about necessarily preciousness, but it's like, what does the world perceive anime to be?
Totally.
Okay.
And this could stand as anime, right?
Yeah.
It
100%.
should. It is. It's Japanese animation, but this is the
But it's
this
not-
is the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
This is the one the timeless classics that sit on top, as opposed to the more
farm- the
serial
factory,
ones
you know?
that just get more
Yeah.
pumped out. Okay. Another thing which I love, obviously, so it won Best Animation at the Oscars this year. This
Over
is-
Across the Spider-Verse, which is interesting.
This is The Boy and The Heron, which we're talking about, which is this Japanese master who's won all these awards. He's an 80-year-old man. He comes out of retirement to make The Boy and The Heron.
Yes.
Okay, which is this film we're talking about. It wins the Academy Award for Best Animation. And what I loved, and perhaps now we could start talking about the film itself, is that if you'd said to me this was a film he made 10, 15, 20
Yeah.
years ago, I would agree with you, because
100%.
he's not necessarily innovative in his animation production. It's a very timeless, quite old school way of animating, which you don't necessarily see all the time. There's obviously
No.
there's moments in the film where they've clearly obviously used computer 3D animation techniques, but for the most part it's it feels hand drawn. It is hand drawn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's quite a traditional
Yeah.
style.
It reminds me of an interview with Miyazaki that I saw. I don't know if it's from that Miyazaki documentary, which I haven't watched yet.
No, me neither.
Yeah, we should do that. And you should probably figure out a way of screening that. That will be cool.
Okay, where did you see it?
No idea.
Okay, it's out there.
IMDb,
All right. Okay.
browsing board. But there's a clip on YouTube of him being pitched AI,
Yes.
and he sits there and they're obviously pitching this to Ghibli in the way of, like, integrate this into your production. It's going to save you money on animation, whatever. And he sits there and uses, I can't remember the exact phrasing, But he's like, this is diabolical. You should all be ashamed. I'm never going to integrate this into my animation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, fuck off.
So,
So he will stay that way. And
yeah.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know,
Yeah.
Disney don't understand that. They will
Yes.
innovate for the sake of the interest of saving money, you know.
Yeah.
But Ghibli, like Miyazaki's a purist
So,
in so many things.
let's just link the two. There's how do you pronounce his first name?
Hayao, I guess.
Hayao Miyazaki. But then he's linked to the studio.
Well, he's one of the founders.
Okay, so he obviously founded it from the beginning,
Yeah.
and that studio has obviously made films with him
Yes.
throughout his career, and also films without him.
Yeah, films with other directors as well.
Was
Many-
the first film Nausicaa?
I think that's kind of been folded into Ghibli, but Ghibli, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So that's what I also wanted to get
but
into.
It's Ghibli.
Is the name of it?
okay, so let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So in Japanese, it would be Ghibli, or you'll like the Japanese ambassador is there, and he said he pronounced
Yes,
it the Japanese
Ghibli.
way, which is Jiburi.
Ghibli.
Yes.
Yeah, Jiburi, like that. But it's not a Japanese word;
Okay.
it's an Italian word.
Oh,
Because if you've watched any Miyazaki films, you'll know the guy's obsessed with aviation.
absolutely.
Even in this film, like the character's
Yes.
father makes like the cockpit piece for the
Yes.
for the planes, and he got the name from an Italian World War II airplane,
And
that was called the Ghibli.
Okay.
Okay, well
So-
done, Graham.
Okay. So
Technically, both are correct.
So
but
Ghibli.
Ghibli is probably more correct because it's a Japanese studio.
Okay.
but that's how everyone refers. The two are sort of synonymous,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
so Ghibli films and the love of these Ghibli films, and yeah, I remember once also speaking to some Japanese folk and going, "How do I pronounce it?" And they were saying like Ghibli.
Yeah, Jiburi.
yeah.
But it's the same as short straw in Japan. It's like we're not short straw, we're
Yes.
shorter straw.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, but I mean, it's short straw. And they're
Yeah.
like, no.
No, it's
shorter
interesting.
straw.
It's that thing of converting English words into kanji characters if you had
Yes.
to write it, so you're using sounds.
Yeah,
So my name in Japanese would be Koru,
right.
Okay.
2 syllables, which is
Okay.
fucking cool.
But let's get into the film.
Yes.
So we can perhaps speak to some level of the back of the box because we don't want to actually get too much into it or speak too specific because we want you to discover
Yes.
a lot of it in the film. The one thing I can say, perhaps at the forefront of this chat,
Yo.
is that I think we can safely say it delivers.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
It does deliver.
I think it gives you everything that you've come to love from these films. So I want to perhaps use that as a point to say that if you don't know Studio Ghibli,
Yeah.
if you don't know Miyazaki, and you think this might be a beautiful, simple, whimsical
Yes.
Fairy tale,
piece of animation that
you know?
perhaps all kids could enjoy,
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you
No.
that you really need to tread lightly and
Nice.
perhaps not watch it.
Your 5-year-old might cry.
Yes.
I also don't think this should be your first Miyazaki film.
No way.
Because I think this is his most inscrutable movie.
That's a really good way of
You know,
putting it,
because
What does that mean?
inscrutable. Like
yeah.
you can't figure out what it means.
Yes, I
It's
think
nebulous.
it's
When it
like-
ends,
deliberately indecipherable in a
Yes.
way.
And I
Yeah.
think there's something really interesting to say at this point as well, which is when we left the film. So sorry, we watched this film last week, which was very cool. There was a nice advanced screening, more advanced than most advanced screenings.
Yeah.
So we've had a good week to be able to process this and
Sit
talk
on
about
this
it
egg,
before,
you know?
and actually put out an episode before it actually comes to cinemas.
Yes.
Usually it's within the week, and so we're talking about it once it's out.
Yeah.
That we're usually able, the three of us, able to watch a film, and it's so funny whenever I get home, and that's when I do my Letterboxd review. I see you two have always already put your film diary listing in with your rating, and this was the first time ever in 2 years of like solid film watching where you guys didn't give a review.
Yes.
And you
Oh,
didn't
right.
give a rating because all of us needed to go like, fuck, I actually need to process this.
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Like we all just clocked the fact that we watched it and that we gave it a heart. I think most of us gave it a
Yes.
heart.
Yes.
But none of us were able to give it a review, which I think is so fascinating.
It's so interesting. And then Graham and I played Destiny on PlayStation when we got home. And then we spoke a little bit about it in the game, got
Yes.
distracted,
Yeah.
and then started talking about it on WhatsApp after Destiny. And then I stayed up until like 1:30 reading
Oh, yeah.
reviews
Okay.
and like writing my own review at the same time to like figure it out, like write it deliberately and be like,
Yes.
this is what I think it's about. And I think it's the kind of film.
Yeah.
I think Graham's also really good at being like, but it could be about this as well.
Mm.
And I think it's a really, really good film to say whatever interpretation you make it to be, that's a valid interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's like a really cool film that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, like, again, like I was saying before I got interrupted, thankfully I remembered what I wanted to say.
Sorry.
Well, I said it was like inscrutable, and then the conversation went in a different.
Okay, sorry.
Now I already forgot what I was going to say. Okay, so most of the time with his films, they sort of have like a choose your own difficulty mode. Like it's a
Right.
choose your own adventure thing. Like you can engage with it. Most of the films like Spirited Away as just like a coming of age fantasy story.
Yes.
Or you can look at it as like this criticism of like Western influence on Japan and like
Yes.
capitalism and all that stuff.
Yes.
But it works on both levels.
Yes.
I think this is his kind of his only like hard mode only movie. You
That's
know.
good.
Where it's like it's hard to engage with it as just like a simple fantasy story,
Yes.
you know, because it is so much more dense and so much more
Yes.
thematically layered.
Yeah, and I think to make that a little bit more tangible for people listening,
Yes.
it's because I was saying to Graham there was a moment where characters walked into one space
Yes.
and then appeared in another space and then appeared in a third space. So it's like beginning, middle, end sequence. But there was no connective tissue and all three spaces were
it's
different.
just dream logic.
Yeah. So the narrative is very much like that as well.
Yes.
Where you
Yeah.
kind of don't have a clear string pulling you through the story of good exposition, of like solid understanding of, or like straightforward, simple storytelling, like you're saying, with
Yes.
like fairy tale level, spirited away storytelling.
Yes.
And it's very much feels like I came out and I kept on thinking this is like Miyazaki's 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's got nothing to do with
Yes.
space.
Yeah.
But in the same way, you're engaging with metaphor through animation.
Yes.
And that's why it feels like it's hard to pin down.
Yeah.
And you have to sleep on it and then go, oh, I think this is about creativity. And Graham's like, no, I think it's about deforestation and industrialization. And we're going like, whoa, this is cool.
Because I think you can like look at Miyazaki's other movies and say he thematically works in the same space like a lot.
Yes.
Like environmental destruction and social imbalances, you know, exploitive capitalism,
Yes.
like those themes, and like loss of spirituality and all those things, which are quite clear in a lot of his other movies.
Yes.
I'm going, okay, how do we find these themes in this film?
Yes.
You know, 'cause
You've
like-
spoken about like how Howl's Moving Castle
Yes.
was made during and is about the Iraq
Yeah.
invasion, right?
Yes.
America's invasion of Iraq. So,
Interesting.
yeah, because he's always going off to fight in a war. It's very much like an airborne battle because of all
Yes.
the like fire, smoke
Yeah.
in the clouds,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And those themes do run through this. And like you're saying, the nature's always in his movies.
Yes.
And there's very much a ancient coming into the present moment thing. So like the myths of Japan exist in the present, or there are
Yes.
gods
Yeah.
that are destroyed by man. And
Yeah. I came home and my only like first like Graham's got far more articulate great words. My review when I came home was lekker weird. and so Leslie, my fiance, was like, so it wasn't good. I was like, no.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. It was amazing, but I mean it's weird.
Yeah.
She's like, but then that's not good. I'm like, no, it's good.
weird is good.
But I think perhaps to talk about war and settings and themes, The Boy and the Heron, we can say, takes place during World War II,
Yes.
but it doesn't feature much.
Yes.
Basically what happens is it's a boy who we quickly get the sense his mother has died,
Yes.
and he moves to the country with his father to be with sort of a new wife,
His aunt.
Yes.
who's actually his aunt,
Yeah.
which then gets pieced together.
Yeah.
And so he's in this kind of strange place. He's at this house sort of by a water. He encounters this heron, this pesky heron. And he encounters something on the property which seems to be this old building, this
Yes.
old ruin that has some mysticism to it. But then I don't want to give too much more away. But
Yeah.
it starts quite slow and quite simple. and quite quiet, and you sort of wonder, like, where's this going to go?
Now,
To
when's
some
the-
degree, it
when's
feels
the
a bit slow.
Ghibli happening.
And but then once he spends a bit more time with this heron, once he goes
Yeah.
into this castle, you get the fantasy,
Yeah.
and then this incredible film plays out in that regard. So I don't want to. That's the thing, is I don't want to speak too much more about the film itself
All right.
without giving too much away, because I think there's something quite exciting about discovering it. But yeah, it's
You
it's quite
will,
something.
when you come out of it, I can confidently say this: you will never look at parakeets the same way.
But similar to quite a lot of his films is this idea of like a portal, is this idea of time travel,
Yes.
going into another world. The way in which our main character, in Spirited Away, just goes through that tunnel with her family in the car and is now in this alternative universe.
Yes.
How in Howl's Moving Castle, he goes into that castle and there's trapdoors that take him into
Yeah.
other places. That's why I'm saying that this film does deliver the
Yeah.
magic that you love, because we do go into this alternative time space world.
Yeah.
And it's not for kids. It's
Yeah.
not for young kids, especially
Definitely.
when the heron reveals certain parts of itself.
Yes.
But it's very Ghibli. So
Yeah.
if you do know and love those films, and if you are young and have kids that have consumed those things, you know, like there is something magical about a cat bus, which we know
Yeah.
from My Neighbor Totoro. But there's also something kind of fucking weird and scary about a cat bus.
Yes.
And so if you can toe that line, then it's certainly
Yeah.
one for the kids. But I'm not actually even 100% sure of its rating yet. I must just confirm with the
I would be
distributors
curious to see what they
it's
say.
been given.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because it is too nebulous for kids to consume. But I
Yeah.
think 100% the takeaway from this chat is, if you plan to see this, prepare to think about it afterwards.
Yeah.
If you're not a person that likes to think about animated movies, don't
Yes.
Yeah.
go watch this.
Because that's what we've spoken about a lot. That's been one of the big themes. It's something that came up with Leon when we literally addressed the one thing that I really kept from my film school, which was something he said. And then when he visited the video store, we spoke about it, which is, do you leave the film a different person?
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing that you can ever leave a film is just, bland.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Forget about it.
Indifference.
You forgot you watched it. The fact that you guys and me just have been thinking about it for the whole weekend,
Yeah.
for the whole week says so much.
Yeah, now that you say that, I've been like sitting on this rating for a long time.
Yeah.
Have you decided on anything yet?
I need to watch it again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same.
that's what also
Yeah.
your review. You didn't give it
But
any stars, Graham,
Yeah.
but you said I just need to watch this a few more times.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wrote down in the review that there was a certain shot that I'm never going to forget
Right.
in my entire life.
And which one was
I
that?
can't give it away because it's in the climax.
Okay.
But because it's got so much to do with the way I interpreted it,
Yes.
with creativity and how you use influences in creating new things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it was profound. And I sat there thinking a lot about that afterwards. And I've thought about it over the past couple of days. So yes, it's stuck with me.
Yeah.
Well, okay. The shot with the paper.
No, it's with the blocks and the bird on the table. Like in the final moments.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
can't give it away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe we come back to it like
Yeah, I
next
think
week or the
let's
week
keep
after
talking
once it's
about
been
it.
in theaters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do like our spoiler discussion
And I
once
think
we've
it's
had more time to think about it. as
Really
well.
interesting as well to think about a chat of gibbery with Graham, because
Yeah.
like an extended anthology of films to chat, because
Yeah.
getting into Miyazaki and his films is interesting. And I think
Yeah.
you, like in lieu of having this chat, watching The Wind Rises
Yes.
and The Boy and the Heron back to back are really interesting because they're both final sign-off movies
Yeah.
from Miyazaki.
Okay. The Wind Rises, was that the last film he did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now this is the last film he did.
And that
Yes.
was about an artist who he adored his entire life, the person who built the
Yeah.
airplanes that the Japanese used in the war.
Yeah, he does the guy. It's a fictionalized biography of the guy who
Yes.
designed the Zero.
And it's about him coming to terms and reconciling the beauty of his creation with the horror
Yeah.
of how it's used by the military.
Okay.
And it's like reconciling those two things in like aligning that with Miyazaki and his legacy as an anime director.
Yeah.
And then this is also about a wizard who is very much Miyazaki.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So-
I see that.
It's like they're both films that deal with what did my life mean?
Yes.
What does my work mean? And seeing that 10 years apart is like an interesting thing to try and break down.
So he had retired himself for a decade.
He's retired a few times.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
still-
less than a decade. This movie took like 7 years to make.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So he came out of retirement like after 2 years. He was
Yeah,
like, this sucks.
2 or 3 years, and he was like, obviously there was something there that he felt, something additional. That's another thing I'm trying to figure out, is what the Wind Riser says about his career. This has to be saying something different. He can't be repeating himself,
No, he
otherwise he wouldn't
wouldn't.
have bothered.
Yeah, he wouldn't have
You
bothered.
know,
That's a really good point.
yeah.
But why do you think it took that long? Because of how these films are made?
Because
or
they're made, and because of how exacting he is. Like, he is a perfectionist. Like, they would reanimate whole scenes because he wasn't happy with them. And they'd like go back and redo and redo and redo, and just like everything had to be like perfect.
Yeah.
Because that's just, you know,
The way he
kind of
works.
curmudgeon that he is.
Yeah. Did he draw the things himself?
I don't know how much he still does himself. He definitely used to.
Okay.
Or at least he would like do character designs and all that sort of thing. Because
So
he started in manga. He started
Are
with...
there original sketches and works that one could obviously
Yeah, I
collect?
don't know. There
or-
must be.
But
I know
I mean,
that
he
they
himself-
always do art books of...
Was he himself literally an artist? Is the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he started
Well,
off
yeah, he
Sen
started
Anime.
in manga. Like Nausicaa was a manga before he turned it into an anime.
Oh my god.
And he started in Lupin the Third.
Okay.
And his first movie was A Castle of Cagliostro, which freaking rules. It is so cool.
Really?
Oh, it's so good.
I remember watching Nausicaa and like sitting there going, this is one of the most beautiful things
Yeah.
I've ever seen. It's an ugly world, but it's
Yes.
gorgeous.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
What is it called? Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind.
Yeah, in the Valley of the Wind.
It is
A film.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
So it's a
it's
second.
the first like
Ghibli.
Yeah, I think so. Or it was like it was folded into, I think the studio was founded after
Okay.
they made that film, but because it involved like basically everyone who
became the
became
company.
Ghibli, yes.
Oh, okay, so it was like
Yes.
the business case for starting a
Yeah.
company or something. Beautiful movie about like post-apocalyptic world where like some kind of why is the basic word spores? What creates a
Yes.
spore?
Okay.
Fungus.
Yes.
Like a fungus has taken over the world,
Yes.
Okay.
and some of it's toxic, and there are creatures that live within this fungus, and it's spreading into cities.
Yeah.
So there's like a direct theme there towards like toxic air. He's like always thought
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
He has always thought about it.
Yes.
But the character story is beautiful. It's beautifully animated. And they were like wind riders on these little
Yes.
like plane things.
Yeah.
Again, planes.
Yeah.
No,
No,
and
it's
I just
obsessed
think-
with aviation.
Yeah, I just think of something, even the sweetest of cutest moments, like Ponyo.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
like there's also just these sort of amazing moments where she's this girl who was a goldfish that becomes a girl, but there's that moment where she's sort of riding the waves, and the waves are these big fish instead of the water, and it's just there's a little bit of a haunting moment
Yeah.
in those moments where you're like, this is weird and unsettling,
Yes.
but there's just something so imaginative and magical about it.
yes.
And it's devoid of any CGI or, you know, big studio production. It's just
Yeah.
someone's crazy animation that
Yeah.
could, you know, really only come from this weird Japanese place where they do think of things weirdly. And, you know, I'll never forget, Japan was a nation that at the height of the point where people were trading and colonizing and moving and you know, really sort of spreading their own cultures and changing their cultures around the world. At that specific time, Japan didn't want anyone foreign to touch Japanese soil.
Yeah.
And so for as long as 2 centuries, they didn't allow any foreigners to touch foot, literally, on Japanese soil. And you can see the result of that, which is that they
Yeah.
are so remarkably unique.
yes.
You know, when everyone else has got, you know, all these different washes and flavors and
Yes.
diversity, Japan is unmistakably Japan.
No, totally. How
And when
many
you-
of us have those American small fridge magnets license plates from New York that have or California that have our name on it?
Sure, but
I was given one of those when I was 12. And I was
Yeah.
like, why do I have this? I haven't
Right.
been to America.
and when you're standing in Shibuya Station, everyone as far as you can see is Japanese, but you sort of make this eye contact with the one foreigner that's different, and you both look at each other and you both kind of have the same thought, which is, why are you here? What are you doing here? And you look at each other and you sort of like, you're different, and you treat it as different, and as much as our Japanese friends were very welcoming and very hospitable and like arguably literally the nicest people in the world, you just did know that you could never be them. You could never be one of them ever, because you're literally just not Japanese.
Right, and it's so much more than just race.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and
it's
when you're in the
culture, it's an
airport,
identity.
I'll never forget once because I went to Japan for the first time in high school, and with my family, and my dad pointed at the point in arrivals in the airport where he's like, look at the wording.
Right.
You called a foreigner.
Gaijin.
You're not a visitor. So like immediately as you arrive, you are told you're different.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember my friend Shana going to teach English in Japan.
Oh, yes.
And gaijin, it's kind of a no-no word to say to foreigners because it's impolite to go to someone and say foreigner.
Yes.
It's like the way, like in Jonathan's green card application, they call him an alien.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you still use that word? That is terrible.
Yeah.
But then Shana was just walking around the little small town Japanese village she stayed in, where an old Japanese lady saw that she didn't have know anyone when she arrived. So she invited Shana over every single week for tea.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And I was like, that's the most beautiful thing I've
nice.
ever heard. But a whole bunch of 8-year-old Japanese boys ran up to her one day, went, gaijin, and ran away.
Wilder.
They were being naughty little shits, dude. They were like, fuck you, gaijin, and ran away. She was like, holy shit. But then she was also stalked, which is like the dark side of small town Japan, which is hectic. They say to the English teachers that go to Japan, by the way, this is a bit of a tangent, but that you shouldn't, when you put out your washing to dry, if you're a foreign woman that's staying in Japan to teach English, you, in these like small little towns and stuff, if you put your washing out to dry, you should also buy men's clothing so that there's male underpants and stuff, so people think that there's a man staying with you.
Right.
Interesting.
Otherwise, you'll be targeted.
Good Lord.
By creeps.
Yes.
Weird.
Someone delivered groceries to her house, like knocked on the door. A guy that'd been stalking her for 2 years. It's fucked up.
Weird.
Yeah.
Speaking of, now this is a long segue, but war, fighting, battles. This is my attempt at segueing into Civil War.
Cool.
Which is a film that's out in cinemas at the moment. This is a film by Alex Garland, who is a very smart British filmmaker. He wrote The Beach, which became the film with Leonardo DiCaprio. He wrote and directed Ex Machina, which is a very celebrated, very cool, very edgy sci-fi film, which is on streaming platforms. I think it's on Netflix. I saw it and was like, oh, we must mention the fact that you need to watch Ex Machina if you haven't already.
Yes.
And so, Civil War is out now. Cole, you've seen it?
Yes.
Graeme, you haven't?
No.
I haven't. I need to admit the fact that I haven't. It started on Friday at the Bioscope, but I've had such a whirlwind of a weekend.
To be fair.
That I haven't had a chance to watch it in my own cinema.
My mate Ian said this to me the other day, because I was complaining about how hard it is to maintain a clean home. And they said, like, doing a full-time job, like handling all the responsibilities of an adult, like balancing those two things are pretty hard. So you're probably doing fine already. And you're running a business at the same time and in a band. So I'm like, don't stress about not watching Civil War, bro.
No, and we
You're
had
fine.
a very exciting weekend. The Bioscope won an award at the Comics Choice Award.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
We do a weekly comedy show, for those who don't know, called Bioscope Sundays. We've actually had Shan Ray van Wyk, who is the comedian who basically heads it up every Sunday. And once a year, the comedians get together for the biggest night in comedy in South Africa, the Savannah Comics Choice Award, where they all vote on, it's 12 awards. And one of those awards is best comedy show or event or festival. And Bioscope Sundays won.
Yes.
So that
Fantastic,
dominated this
man.
weekend for me. It was a big
Well done.
celebration and a lovely thing. So
That's really
Those
cool.
guys work very hard.
I'm
I mean,
happy for you.
we work hard as the Bioscope to be a very solid foundation for them, but they very much the house that makes it special every week. So
Cool.
shout out to Shanray and
Yeah.
Tsitsi, who came on board this year as another co-host of the event. But yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch Civil War. So
Okay.
Civil War is a very interesting. There's so many adjectives that one could use, but a little harrowing in the fact that it's a story about what if there was an actual civil war in America right now. I think it's immediate. I don't think it's too near future. It's about if there were to actually be a civil war in what is a very divided country, with a lot of things heating, with Trump now back in the election run,
Yes.
and it's wild to think, and they could, with that many guns and that much of a militarized
Yeah.
country, they could be on the brink of a civil war again, and it's amazing to think about. So you managed to watch it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think I was extremely surprised because going into it, you see the poster and the trailer, and I think those are two very different marketing elements.
Yeah, and as the Bioscope, I've struggled a little because I've been trying to say to everyone, like, this isn't a silly action movie.
Right.
Because it kind of
Absolutely
looks
not.
like it could be,
Yes.
an ETV action movie. There's tanks and planes and,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's quite apocalyptic. But,
Yeah.
but I think I've tried to explain to people as best I can that there's a smart intellectualism behind it.
Yes. Yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay,
I think that
interesting.
when you go into it, you expect to see a macro political thriller
Yes.
of the various factions and the warring between the two, and you don't see that.
Okay.
You actually have very little context as to why the Civil War happened,
Yes.
Okay.
why the president is a tyrant
Right.
and initiated this kind of divide. It's seen through the eyes of journalists, and it's very much a film about wartime journalism. That's what it's about.
And I think that's perhaps what I was trying to prepare people for. It was that it was going to be something more. It wasn't going to be a simple action film.
Yeah. And I think because it's set in America, you can make a film about the Bang Bang Club in South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which they
for
did, which
example.
was-
I've never seen it, but I'm assuming it's like it's about the fact that you're pointing a camera at these events and you're the person that's not helping
Yes.
and you're the person that has to record it.
Yeah.
And Kirsten Dunst, which is how you have to pronounce her name, Kirsten Dunst, like, photographs this war, and there is like this moment of you appreciating the fact that she has to document it at all costs, and that's the point. That's the
Right.
job, because there's a young girl that joins their road trip down to DC to go do an interview with the president. That's the premise.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't done an interview in 14 months, and they shoot journalists on site in this government. So, like, they have to figure out, they have to get that interview.
Yeah.
Right.
The one character who's an amazing actor, I need to figure out his name,
Mm.
like, really, really fun and charismatic. He's all about actually kind of high on the experience of being in a war zone.
Right.
But Kirsten plays this character that's extremely weather worn. I don't know what word to use. Like,
Yeah.
tired and
I
emotionally
think a lot of journalists
bankrupt.
can be because you're surrounded by this. You're in the shit.
Yeah, the
And
way
if you
it
spend,
starts.
if you spend too much time in it, it can also desensitize you.
And I think it's it's pointing a big finger at America and the like campaigns that it does across the sea,
Right.
off its own soil.
Yes.
And like bringing that violence home and saying, you're just as savage as everyone else potentially.
Right.
Like, you can be this monstrous, because they fully show the worst kind of war crimes happening that these journalists have to experience. Right. So I think it's like, it's an interrogation of American identity and like what they think it means to be an American.
Okay.
And the violence that their army commits overseas very proudly, and bringing that back home. But it is a film about, I suppose, the importance of journalism. That's what I got out of it. But I think that at the end, the statements of it, I fully felt like I wanted that context of why this president was.
Yes.
maybe they were being
worth
vague
chasing.
on purpose.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
So I've read a lot of people, like in their reviews and stuff, say it is, despite what it might look like from the outside, it is kind of apolitical.
Yes.
Okay.
No, it is
So I want to know
apolitical.
if you agreed with that. And the other thing that I've read is people commenting, I don't know how you feel about this, should it not be? Is it the kind of story that should be taken aside in something like this?
Yeah, it's interesting because then if you do, then you endorse the right to bear arms.
Yes.
For example, because then you're rising up against the tyrants.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was imposing a view of the tyrants, probably Trump becoming a dictator, Nick Offerman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think actually I'd retract that statement because I feel like you definitely take a side with the journalists at the end.
Okay.
The journalists are apolitical.
Right.
Like you see them in the war zone with both sides of the army, I think.
Yes.
Like it's difficult to tell who they're following. And these soldiers, as they're busy infiltrating a building, are pulling the journalists along, holding them aside.
Right.
You know, and this young girl who's with Kirsten Dunst, who idolizes her, is learning about wartime journalism by being there.
Right.
She's tagging along very much to Kirsten Dunst's chagrin. I don't know what word I'm trying to find, but she's annoyed that she's there. She's like, you cannot be here. It's
Right.
dangerous, but you do it. You were this age when you started.
Oh, okay.
And it's a very interesting film. Again, a film that you will have to think about. But a part of me wanted the little political thriller, you know,
Yes,
at the
okay.
end. Because I remember someone on Reddit saying the most ridiculous thing about this movie is that Los Angeles and Texas form an alliance.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called
The Western Alliance.
The Western Alliance.
And that feels like a very deliberate way of not being political. One place which in the
Exactly.
real world is very left, one which is very right. And I was saying, oh, these places have joined forces.
But I still-
Exactly. So
Yeah.
if you're an American and you go into that, you
Yes.
have to think about what would have happened
Yes.
to the United States to rise up against the nation, right? For those two
Yes.
different political views to come together
Right.
and hold hands. So
But it definitely it's gotten people talking, and in the comments that I've seen as well, people have also said the same thing, which is how could California and Texas ever,
Yes.
combine? But then in the comments, it was filled with like, I was driving through Texas and there's loads of wind farms, and
Right.
there's people that are liberal in Texas, and it's like it just has caused and created discussion, which I think is cool.
that's very interesting. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch as an American.
Right.
I think that experience might be a bit diluted if you're not an American.
Okay.
But I definitely felt like coming out of it, there is a statement, but like to David Ehrlich's point, Alex Garland always comes very close to saying something and never says it. I was
Okay.
like, that is a hectic thing to say about a director.
Yeah.
But I kind of got a sense of that as well,
Okay.
where you go, not what's the point, because you were like entertained in the way of being thrilled. Like,
Yeah.
you're watching war. The sound is there was fully a jump scare cut that like took me. I was like, fuck, that was like a shell shock.
Yes.
It's like war. It's like effectively done.
Okay.
But then, kind of left it going. Kind of, what's the point?
Do
and
you
then,
think telling a story about photojournalism, if that's the point, would have been better served by setting it in a real war?
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay,
I think it works doing a fictional war,
Cool. Okay.
but then also it's not a fictional war, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's like it's very much an
These moments are
interrogation
real.
of
Yeah.
America's immediate identity and its
Yeah.
political divisiveness.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say is like the hardcore thing about this is that Alex Garland's giving up directing.
Yeah, it seems like this is going to be one of his last films for
It is
the
going to be his
foreseeable
last
future.
film.
Right.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
He's like done with
Wonder.
movies.
interesting.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah. GeForce, what have
Yeah.
you been watching?
Fallout.
Fallout.
Cool.
I watched the first couple episodes. They did that thing where they dumped the whole series on in one go, which I don't like.
Yeah,
But
it's done.
Where is it
regardless.
and what is it?
it is Amazon Prime Video.
Okay.
It's based on the video game series, which has been running forever, which goes back to like the 80s. And it's a post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear war story.
Okay.
So it's this kind of retro futurist story where it's set in like 2070 something, or it starts in 2070 something, but all the aesthetic is very 50s.
Cool.
So it's like that retro futurist, like you've played Fallout, you've played some of them.
Absolutely.
And then it picks up like 200 years after a nuclear war has essentially wiped out the surface of the planet.
Okay.
And
So are
prior
people
to
living
that,
underground.
yes, prior to that, I think we're going to be getting this in flashbacks more. Is people were sold these vaults. I'm trying to describe these things because I know you know it, but I'm trying to like. So
God.
people live in vaults which are all numbered, like rich people basically were sold into this thing of living underground, or they were like preemptively sold these things. Nuclear war happened. A bunch of people who could afford it lived in these things.
Yeah.
And now 200 years later, the typical Fallout story, this happens in like every game, and this is no different, is something happens that means a vault dweller has to leave their vault and go do something out in the real world.
Okay.
Because people have still survived on the surface, and there's all these factions and stuff that have.
But the safest place to be is still in the vault.
Yeah, if for the people who could afford to be there in the first place.
Okay.
So there's kind of like three main characters essentially. One of them is the one who is now having to leave this vault. Something has happened inside a vault. And now it's like forced her out.
And in the games, when you play them, are you usually that character that has
Yes.
to make your way out? And,
Yeah.
and
You
roam the
always
surface?
start as a vault dweller, and then like in one, your father dies or whatever, and that sort of thing.
Yes.
In this case, her father is kidnapped by raiders, and now she sets off into the world to try and find him.
Okay.
Then the other main character is a kind of like trainee, what's the word? A squire in the Brotherhood of Steel.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so the Brotherhood of Steel is one of the factions that exists outside of vaults, and they're these insane fascist soldiers.
Interesting. I never got that from the game.
Oh yeah, dude, they're like. This is another thing, just to derail myself here, is the people who are going like, oh, why'd they make Fallout like woke? Why'd they make Fallout political?
Fuck off.
And I'm like, it's a story about nuclear war it came about during the Cold War, and you think it
Yes.
isn't political.
Yes.
It's always been political. But then the other character is a ghoul.
Oh,
the
cool.
ghoul. So in the world of Fallout, there are people who have, because of the nuclear war, mutated.
Okay.
And they're ghouls. They're sort of zombie-like, but they still have like all their cognitive
Yes.
abilities. Who's played by Walter Goggins. Wally Goggs as a
cool.
ghoul.
Who's Walter
Freaking
Goggins
cool.
again?
Let me look up Wally Goggs. You'll recognize him.
Yeah, you'll
Walter
recognize
Goggins.
him. Let me check.
Great actor. Yeah, but it's like it gets the tone of Fallout really well, and it's sort of.
Are you happy with it?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. I've only seen 2 episodes, but Fallout had always had this kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek, slightly satirical.
Yes.
Again, very overtly political.
Is the music good?
Yes.
Oh, that guy.
Because
They
Walter
use that
Goggins.
again, that like 50s style.
so
yeah.
I remember one of the best trailers I've ever seen for a game
Fallout
was
3.
a close up on a radio.
Yes.
And then it starts with I don't want to set the world on
Yes.
fire. And then the camera's pulling out this old timey little tune, and the camera's pulling out, and then it like from this radio, and the radio is inside a fucked up diner. And then there's this like wide of a desolate wasteland, and then there's a Brotherhood of Steel guy with this giant machine gun looking into camera. You're like, what is that? That is such a good contrast of like music. So all the music you listen to is from the era
Yes.
when everyone went into the vaults,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, it's like-
No art's been created since.
Yeah.
Which again is in the future, but everything is like, it looks like the 50s, but they have like robots and,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The giant fire-breathing ants.
Yes.
So
Okay,
it's,
wild.
it's
Yeah.
great.
It's, I'm enjoying it so
excited,
far.
Dude.
I think
I'm
it's a good
excited
show.
to hear that's great.
Yeah.
I finished The Crown,
Yay.
Ah, okay.
and the
Has
final...
the Crown finished?
Yeah. 6 seasons.
Did they want to end it when Queen Elizabeth dies?
No. So it doesn't end in the series when she dies. I think it ended before she died.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the point was to make the show about her reign.
Yes.
Okay,
Very much
so then
like-
because when she did die, everyone then obviously looked to the show creators to go, well, how's
Yes.
this going to
Like,
change
what
your
now?
And I think they said that we always saw it ending.
The way they address that is so elegant. It's
Right.
like it's kind of a deviation from like straight narrative driven fictional storytelling into a little bit of a metaphor space that can feel a bit like whiplash. But I
Okay.
think they handle it so beautifully, and the final shot is one of the most gorgeous things I have ever seen. Oh my god. I
Wait.
was like in tears. I was like, this is beautiful. What
Right.
an amazing story. The way they handle the fact that she dies,
Okay.
well, that she's died in real life, that her reign is over, but she doesn't die in the story.
okay.
Yeah.
It is incredible.
Okay.
It is one of the best series I've ever watched in my entire life.
The Crown on Netflix.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like the acting of all 3 major Queen actresses is absolutely insane. So it was Claire Foy at the start for the first 2 seasons as young Elizabeth. Middle-aged Elizabeth was
I don't know.
Olivia Colman.
Uh,
And then old Elizabeth was Imelda Staunton,
Yes.
who many people remember from Harry Potter 5 as the bitchy headmistress.
Okay.
And she is like next
Umbridge.
level amazing. Umbridge, well
There you
done,
go.
Graham. And also it's got Jonathan Pryce as Prince Philip.
Cool.
If he's in anything, I'm there for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dominic West as Prince Charles. Like, the casting is just amazing, but like Elizabeth Debicki's performance as Diana in these last 2 seasons, it's like heartbreaking.
Right.
Yeah.
It is
It's interesting.
one of the best series ever made. I'm not
Yeah.
convinced.
And what's interesting is when you feel that that's the one. You know, there can be so many different versions, so many different people playing the Queen in
Yes.
movies and shows and things. But this one feels quite definitive. It feels
Yes.
like it's got the stamp.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah,
I give it my stamp.
it's the
dude.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And even as someone who has repeatedly said how much I hate the Royalists, you still think I should watch it? Okay.
I mean, I kind of have the same view. I'm like, what's
Yes.
the point of a monarchy? These people just are like parasites in society.
Pointless
And
out-of-touch
then-
dimwits.
Yeah, exactly. But then you watch the series and it's dramatic. And
Right.
they've got lives and they contrast the political events with their interior stories. And you're just like, this is elegant storytelling.
Cool.
Elegant's an interesting word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I am a sucker for period pieces
Mhm.
Yeah.
in any shape and form. And it's very much a period series,
Okay.
all the way through from start to finish. And it's a dramatization of events we all know about,
Yes.
which feels like it's got this potency to experiencing it.
Right.
So like when you're waiting for the crash to happen with Diana
Mhm.
and Dodie in Paris,
Yeah.
like waiting, and how they do it, you're like fucking geniuses.
Right.
Genius.
Yeah, elegant's interesting because they've clearly then not exploited it.
No, they haven't.
They've treated it with a certain level of respect,
Yes.
which is clearly
It
what's
is
happened.
respectful.
If you were using the word elegant,
Yes.
Like I was worried about how Charles was going to be framed, because if you think about them having to tell this story, and this guy was going to become king, is now king,
Mhm.
and they're talking about, like, they're dramatizing what everyone saw as like very unfair treatments of Diana,
Yes.
right? And then the way they did that humanizes his perspective, where it's like two sides of a coin.
All right.
And then when she finally passes, you see like his grieving
Mm.
as Prince Charles, and that like brings it all home. You're just like, just two people that didn't get along.
Right.
Has the crown sort of ended now?
Yes.
Are you in time with it ending, or is this something that's
Oh no,
ended a
it
little bit?
happened like a year ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was that long ago.
Okay, so you've just caught up to it.
Yes.
Okay.
Finally.
Sure. Guys, there's actually so much more I want to chat about, but I think we must just wait for
Next
week
week.
to talk
Yeah.
about it. I watched a few films that are older films. They aren't current. So
Nice.
they're quite timeless. We can talk about them at
Cool.
at future episodes. Yeah, just at this point, I'm excited to break these shows up. And
Mm.
what I mean by that is what I've said at the start of this episode, which is the fact that which is what I've said, which is the fact that the video store is going to change its format, and at least experiment with this new format, which I think will be a good one.
Yeah.
Which is where we can have this chat unbridled, unrestricted by the time of the other chat.
Yes.
In that our Clerks chat can be sitting on its own as its own episode, and that a second episode would come out in the week, which would be the guest chat if we have one.
Yes.
And I think that's the cool part, is that I don't want to actually be having the guest chats determine these episodes.
Right.
Right.
They must be a nice standalone bonus episode, which we are thinking to then do on the Thursday, that just add extra flavor, extra chat.
Mm.
The guests will often be pushing something or marketing something that they've got.
Yeah.
So it's an extra added thing to talk about.
Cool.
And a lot of those chats are quite timeless when we're talking about the films that they've loved across their life. And so I'm quite excited to have these Clerks chats, which will come out on a Tuesday, where we can talk for in a way as long
Yes.
as long as we want.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm excited to be on the cusp of that. I think there's some new folks we want to start bringing in to work behind the counter with us, to also change it up and add more voices. And I'm excited.
Cool.
So just once again, on behalf of the video store, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening thus far. Thank you for being someone who tunes in every week. We really love and appreciate you.
Yeah.
And thanks for being there on this with us on this journey, but especially to you guys, Graeme and Cole. Thank you for your time.
Of course.
It's a pleasure.
I really have treasured these moments, and I think we've got something really cool that we've been building, and I'm excited to keep it going because I'm loving this. I'm enjoying this. I get so much out of it once a week, personally, and I think that's arguably the most important part.
Yeah.
That's so cool that we've been doing this we've done this 100 times.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
And it still feels as fun and as novel as it did in the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, you can always
that's
talk
the thing
about
is that
movies.
there's just always so much to talk about.
Yeah.
There's so much that comes out now.
Yeah.
It's like it'll never get tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. Home base is thevideostore.co.za. Please subscribe if you don't already. And yeah, we're going to see you again next week.
Oh, yeah. We'll be here.
All right. Okay. See you then. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Ta-ta.